This week on New to You, part of a complete breakfast, part 2, Glow, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. We are continuing our part of a complete breakfast with a pick from Keith. Before we get into that, I was one of your hosts, John Holt, with me.
One of your other hosts, Keith Vincent, and
your other host, Julian Cage, and special guest,
Brian Jones.
Yay.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back, Brian.
Welcome back, Brian.
Yeah.
So we are a recommendation review podcast where we bring stuff to the table for each of us to check out and discuss and talk to you about it based on a theme. And heck, you may have seen this stuff before, but maybe it's been a while, and maybe you want to talk to somebody else about it or just hear our take.
Or maybe it's so fresh and new that you never even heard of it.
Yep, and you didn't want to.
That's right.
And
you listen to this podcast in your car and going,
what? You're like, man, I can't wait till I'm going to speed home so I can watch this thing.
I'm
going
to drive right off the road.
Because I'm laughing so hard at their awesome descriptions of these things that are good.
I'm going to run over a bunch of kids.
Why am I doing this? This show is making me crazy.
I'm going to blame the show.
I'm going to have the FCC shut them down. Copyright infringement.
So this week, Keith is up with his pick. Keith, why don't we roll into your pick?
All right, let's talk about it.
In this world, there are good guys and there are bad guys. And I will not be bullied into submission.
You were reading the man's part.
Oh, God.
Would you like to start over?
Yes, I would.
I will not be bullied into
Jules brought up the idea of part of a complete breakfast, which was kind of a difficult task because what ended up happening is we all just latched onto something we watched as a kid in the mornings. And so along those lines, I did have a couple of kind of runners up that I thought could bear discussion a little bit. I was going to talk about the Breakfast of Champions, the Vonnegut book, but we, it was kind of a short turnaround, so I didn't think we could all kind of get through that book, even though it's a fast read and it's really fun. What was one of the other ones? Red Dawn was a high contender because the Dawn was in the title, and I was going to say, hey, and the third
communist for breakfast.
That's right. Well, it was dawn. It was a whole new dawn. You can't have breakfast without the dawn. Mm-hmm. And along those kind of like stretching it kind of ideas, I was going to do Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because Kevin Bacon's in it, and Bacon's a part of your complete breakfast.
Wow.
Stretch. But I figured I would save Planes and Trains and Automobiles for another time because I feel like, I don't know, there's a holiday aspect to it that I really like, and I think we could save it for
our transportation theme.
Well, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was kind of a Thanksgiving tradition for me for a good many years. I used to watch it every Thanksgiving because it's a great movie around Thanksgiving. But I finally landed on the show Glow, which is literally a show about a show that I used to watch when I was a kid on Saturday mornings. Way back in the day, on Saturday mornings, you'd have cartoons, and then sprinkled in there would be some like wrestling shows for some reason. And they became so popular that they started getting their own spinoffs. There was there ended up being like an animated wrestling show for the WWF. I think it's called Rock and Wrestling or something like that. It was Hulk Hogan and his buddies versus Rowdy Roddy Piper and his bad guy wrestler buddies. And in this show, Glow, the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, was an actual reoccurring Saturday morning show. You know, it had the same format as the wrestling shows, except they had kind of weird little interesting skits in between that featured their stars, and it had a lot more. It had a much more of a kind of like a public access vibe to it. You know, as I get older, I find myself being attracted to those old kind of like fly by the seat of your pants type of productions that nowadays I'm just like, how did that ever get made? You know?
Yeah.
So a couple years ago on Netflix popped up this documentary about the gorgeous ladies of wrestling, the Glow documentary, and it really kind of takes you through step by step the show and how it gets there and where a lot of the performers, the stars of the show are now. And it's a very heartwarming, very touching, actually, show where most of the performers, at least the ones interviewed, really had fond memory for that time and the kind of like the friendships. It really felt like the way they talked about it, like the kind of bond you get with like a sorority or with, like living with a bunch of friends in a bad apartment, that kind of thing. This is kind of like this bonding that you get from being young, being a certain age, and just being forced to be with these people. And together, you guys all go through some ordeal, which I think is like one of the best parts of that documentary, this kind of camaraderie that came from it. That being said, just last year, the Glow fictionalized like drama/comedy came out on Netflix. Kind of a fictitious recounting of the Glow story. It's got a bunch of directors, but I think the show was created by Jesse Peretz. It's kind of written by each show has got there are a stable of writers and a stable of directors. So you can't say it's directed by this person and that person. But the star of the show, that's kind of through her eyes that we see most of this stuff, is Alison Brie, who plays the character of Ruth Wilder. And I've been a big fan of Alison Brie since Community. She's also really good in Mad Men. She's just good in everything she's in, I think. Mm-hmm. She when she takes on a part, she really commits, which it's kind of hard to put a finger on what that looks like. But to me, I always really like it when I could see somebody really commit to a role and say, like, this character might seem ridiculous, but I'm really just going to put my effort into making this person jump off the page.
And it's funny because the character she plays is kind of like
yeah. But you know what they do subtly well, and we can discuss this later, is she's not a good actress.
Yes.
but you can tell that I think she thinks she's good, mm-hmm. but like in all the scenes where she's reading a monologue or something, she's not that good, and that had to have been a choice, and it's a really
a nice subtlety.
Exactly, and it's that kind of detail that I really like about a lot of these Netflix shows or a lot of these prestige TV shows where they just really allow a character to have flaws and you to kind of, you're not hit over the head with it. They let you discover it.
And I guess it was surprising to see her take on this role. Like,
yeah,
not like a like an obvious choice.
Yeah, but I can't imagine what an obvious choice for her would be. If you're her, you don't want to kind of circle back on some of the other shows that you don't want to kind of reprise your Community role or your or her role from Mad Men. I think it's a nice, and she gets to be this is her show.
Yeah, she's the lead.
As the seasons progress, if there are more, I mean, I'm not certain that she will continue to be the main focus, but I assume they will. I mean, it's all through her. She's our doorway into the story. The person who's set up in this fictitious world, the fella who's kind of setting all this up, is played by Mark Maron.
Well, he's the director hired to do it.
Right. And writer, and he's like at the beginning he thinks he's going to write this kind of fictitious thing to wrap the whole storyline up. Like he's got this funny kind of idea of that it's like this post-apocalyptic future where women rule the world, and in his first take, it's kind of like they all have to wrestle over the last man kind of thing, and it's pretty funny that everyone just kind of says like, no, you don't need to do that. Let's just let us wrestle. Mark Maron is really good in this. Everybody likes his podcast, but
surprisingly good because he also had his own TV show, and I feel where he kind of plays
the
himself.
IFC show, yeah.
And between that show and Glow, I feel like he got way better as an actor.
Well, no, I feel like he's probably been a good actor. I mean, he was an actor before he got into radio. Like that's his thing, a comedian and an actor. But I feel like he was playing this character of himself in the IFC show.
Right.
Kind of like, Larry David, I'm sure if he needed to act, he could act besides just playing himself kind of thing.
I guess just on his own show, he seemed a little stiff or something. And whereas here I feel like, I don't know, he surprised me. He was better than I expected on this show.
I think it's also a matter of how many takes he was given.
Yeah.
But like on his show, it's probably a little more run and gun, like shoulder, like handheld kind of thing.
I think too.
And this one was a little more like the production quality is very high.
I think too, from him talking about it on his own podcast, I think it was kind of like that whole experience was pretty new, and he was wearing a lot of hats and stuff, and maybe
I heard him talking on the Bill Simmons podcast. He was interviewed about it, and they talked about his show and why they decided to not go forward with more seasons, and he's just like, there was no money for us to up the ante on our show, so I just decided, I'm tired of trying to make this thing look great with this budget. And so this Netflix show here obviously has way more of a budget and has much greater production value. So I'm sure he really revels in it. The rest of the cast is this kind of a really, really nice collection of just really great character actors. Everyone bought in on it. No one's kind of half-assing their roles on this show. Then we're kind of along the ride of the creation of this show, of the Glow show, which in many ways has a lot, is going against all odds to even exist. So that's pretty much it about the show itself. The few like soap opera-y elements in it, and there's a lot of kind of ups and downs with these characters all trying to mesh with one another and become this tight-knit group, and kind of how they have to get there. A big kind of reoccurring theme is how do people balance being this character and also having a regular life outside of it. So
and another big theme that you see throughout it is that, like, getting over the hurdle of, hey, we're Hollywood people who want to be actors or models or something, and getting to where, oh, wrestling is a contact performance.
Yeah.
Like it is an actual, like, it's not just schlocky, dumb stuff. It's getting in the headspace of, this is a soap opera. This is with complex plots and with, strong vaudevillian performance in play, and that you need to take it seriously, kind of thing. And that's
and safety is an issue that,
well, safety, but also developing your character, and becoming your character.
Yeah, I think that's one of the arcs, is like they all start out kind of like they're not into wrestling when they start this,
Right.
except for maybe a couple exceptions, and they don't know that much about it, and they don't have that much respect for it. And I think as they become wrestlers, they learn to respect it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I thought that was neat.
Yeah, they grow into the role.
Right.
Yep, let it wash over them.
And they also kind of embrace how schlocky it is.
Yeah.
I guess.
But it just
and have
kind of
fun with it.
Kind of on an odd kind of tangent. One of the things that I really like about the show, and this is just a weird thing maybe about me, but having watched the documentary, I love to kind of try to make the connections of, like, oh, that person is this wrestler. The obvious one is the lady who plays pt2 is obviously Mount Fuji, the wrestler who is named Mount
Alison
Fuji.
Brie is the Russian character.
Yeah.
Nichota, whatever her name is.
Yeah, so it's like loosely based on the real things.
Yeah. They change it around enough so that they don't have to pay any of these actresses any likeness fees.
Do
I'm
you
sure.
think that's why?
I bet you that's a factor.
So Babe, the farmer's daughter, sold her. She had purchased the rights to her character.
Oh, wow.
From Glow, so she could do her own merchandising and stuff. And she sold her, or licensed her rights to Netflix for the show.
Oh, wow.
And so when they're making the show, that's what you get from the documentary, and they don't talk too much about it, but basically the show is very popular. Things were going along for 4 or 5 years, and in 1990 they just boom, hammer down, the real Glow is gone. They just stopped. And it's not everybody got told this and they closed down the production. It's they just never got a call. A lot of these women were never told, and so it was sort of bitter for them that they weren't shown the respect by the director or the show creator, Billy Kimber, or
enough to even talk to them about it.
To even say hey guys, look, we're gonna have a rap party and thank you for all your hard work, but you're out of a job. Basically, the guy who was bankrolling the whole thing,
producer,
just put this guy who owned the Riviera just said, I'm not funding it anymore. It's done, and it just stopped. And it was growing in popularity and appeal, and so there's these people were like, oh, well, we've been sequestered and living this life for 4 or 5 years.
Well, also that's an interesting thing too. In the documentary and it's in the show as well, is that while they're filming and stuff, they all kind of live together in this big hotel. They kind of take over part of a hotel, and it's kind of like a dorm atmosphere.
And it's kind of like a roach motel. It's not a great hotel either.
Right. But it was a little better according to the document. Where they really lived in the documentary
Initially,
was
they lived in the Riviera, then they lived in a road,
a motel. Yeah.
So a lot of them just kind of lost contact. They didn't own their characters or any of this stuff unless they pursued it. And then and a lot of them didn't hear about the Netflix show until someone reached out and say, hey, they're making a Netflix show about Glow. Are you in it? Are you part of it? And they're like, what are you talking about.
Yeah.
So like Matilda the Hun, for instance, was it Lee or Debbie Lee or whatever that woman's name is, was not contacted. So she kind of had like bittersweet for them. Like, yes, it's good that it's getting exposure, and they.
But once again, I'm being exploited in that I'm not.
They're not. Yeah, for all their hard work, they're not getting any sort of like, they developed and worked their butts off for these to build these characters in face of it, and it was just sort of like taken.
And besides the work of the shooting a show and that's hard work. I'm sure they weren't on like great shooting schedules and stuff like that.
But it's tough too because the documentary. Have you talked much about it at all
on this podcast? Yeah, I've certainly mentioned it enough. Yeah, I
was just gonna say that it's basically there's a couple weird moments that they kind of avoid because they couldn't interview Billy Kimber and they couldn't interview. Basically, in the TV show and in real life there was a guy who was like, this was his idea, this whole thing, and he was the announcer. In the show, he's like a rich kid who's like, mommy is writing
in the
checks.
In the TV show, the Netflix show,
right? And they were like in the
but on the air
show.
During the 80s, he was also the on-air announcer guy,
right? And he was the guy who created the show,
the concept,
like
of
he
Glow,
conceived it, and he was the one who got Billy Kimber, the director, like James Mansfield's ex-husband, and a guy who like has directed all these movies in, and that's who Mark Maron is sort of a parallel of, is the Billy Kimber character. This guy got Billy Kimber came with a package with the guy who had the money, which was the guy who owned the Riviera, who had a famous wife whose name I totally forget. Basically, he needed the money. He kind of didn't want to work with either of them to some degree. Him and Billy Kimber butted heads a lot, and it's sort of interesting because this guy loved wrestling and brought a lot of stuff. In the show, he loves wrestling, and he's the one that kind of brings them to their like crazy characters, where it's Billy Kimber who actually brought them to their magnified crazy characters in real life. Like he was the one who gave them these personas and had them amplify those personas. And
he realized that the cartoon aspect of wrestling is very important. Wrestling wouldn't have broken through and become what it is without these weird characters that went along with it, and the kind of like cartoonish aspects of them, of the like Iron Sheik and the Ultimate Warrior type.
But it seems like it was a weird combination of like passions, like people who were really excited to do it and make it and try to just find any way they could to make it happen, and people who were like, well, this is a tax write-off, like, or this should be a loss leader so that I can totally write it off. But then it became successful, so that's an issue. Or or it's basically an infomercial where we're selling hair products and clothes and all this stuff. We aren't, and the wrestlers are just a vehicle to put that stuff out there. And so that's like,
did that become an element of it, like a product placement?
That was part of
stuff?
Glow. Yeah, it was a big thing in Glow. It was like all the like hair products and tights and all the like clothing, because they would just do skits, and they do basically skits that were commercials.
Wow. Okay.
So that was like in the old show, and they haven't put too much of that in the TV show, but you kind of do.
Well, I don't think they're that far into it by
I mean, there's some like getting financing and getting sponsors. There's some weird like fiddling with getting these girls to go out and like sell furniture or whatever, by being their character. There's hints and nods to that in the fictional show. But it's interesting to see like how they go. I guess what I wish that the documentary did more of was show like kind of get into one. It's very tough to tell who's who. They name them by character, and they only really reveal the character when they need to. So it's like the documentary style too is like talking head kind of. It's not super duper informative. It's a very interesting thing, and that's what carries it. And there's a lot of great footage and just amazing characters.
Yeah.
And that carries the documentary and gives you all the stuff, but it definitely left me hungry for more details, because it's clear that like the way it ended, the way they were treated during the show, the people who didn't get interviewed, like all of that, like there's some big holes in the story, and they kind of build the narrative around Mount Fuji in this one, who is an Olympic shot put thrower who didn't get to go to the Olympics because of a boycott that we were doing at the time.
Yeah, the 70s. Or was it 80? That basically the Moscow Games.
Yeah. And so she was just this sweetheart, and she's reflected in the show, like you're saying, as there's a character who
Machu Picchu is
So it's interesting to see like they kind of craft the narrative around her as like the beating heart of Glow and just like a super nice person, but they touch on like the injuries and just sort of like they kind of avoid the real gross stuff. Like they say we'd sneak out and do the stuff, but like there had to be drugs, there had to be like sex, there had to be people who
had to be.
Well, no, because
I mean, come on, show me the sex and the drugs. Come on.
They had a roster of
we all know it's there.
But they had a roster of over like 50 or 60 wrestlers over the course of 5 seasons. And
yeah, there must have been orgies. I mean, come on.
Well,
show us the orgy.
The bigger issues, the guy who owned the Riviera, one of the like rumors, and this is one thing they touch on, is that he was told by his wife to cancel the show because he was getting familiar with the girls on the Glow thing. So it was this kind of weird, like, maybe it's just patent jealousy, but
maybe it's Maybelline.
Right. So they didn't really delve into the meat of some of the, like, why did this thing die after 5 years? If it just, like, they just talk about how successful it became and show you all these clips, and they just kind of like point you at the rosy.
That's the mystery.
The rosy end.
That's the mystery.
Yeah.
That's why you got to watch the Glow Part 2 documentary.
Maybe they'll do
the missing years.
Maybe they'll do a more in-depth look at it during the Netflix series.
Yeah, maybe.
But even then, it'll just all be innuendo. Like, you'll say, like, what's fact and what's fiction. Honestly, I mean, that's always my beef with things that are these kind of like dramatic retellings. It's kind of like, okay, so where's the line? Which part of this was the real part and which part of this was just drama to make it more interesting for,
Yeah, but even getting, like, I don't know, you get a hard enough hitting interview and you get corroboration and you go to the person who could tell you their side of the story, and then if they bow out, you say this guy bowed out, and then that leaves you with partial knowledge, but it's better than being left with a total black hole.
Sure. I'm just saying that I have a feeling there are probably legal reasons why they weren't going down these venues, in that the person who's like, hey, I own Glow and I'm not going to let you make this documentary if you say this or this or this or talk about this.
And I think somebody opened a merchandise page. You can buy the DVDs of Glow stuff, like, through an official Glow page.
Like old specials and stuff?
Yeah, and actual like episodes.
Yeah,
they're like $25 DVDs per episode. It's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Now, did you guys watch Glow at all when you were younger? Was it because
I did. I mean, I don't have like super strong memories of it. But I was just the right age to have seen them.
I remember commercials, but I don't think I ever watched the actual show. I wasn't wrestling was a distract for me.
Yeah, I was just like, those aren't cartoons.
Yeah, unless it's a wrestling cartoon.
I mean, I think I was in France during the height of wrestling, and I only caught some of it, but Glow was over by then, so I didn't even know it existed until I saw the Netflix show.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't agree. I mean, I think I remember like hints of it, but I don't think I remember ever watching an episode or to it. And then like pieces came back to me.
Yeah, exactly. Once you see the clips, you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's what the documentary did for me. Yeah. Just like, oh yeah, I do remember this, and I remember the specific characters and actresses.
It's just a matter of like, it was like a matter of that. Like it was also a matter of time. Like I would get up like at 6 a.m. on Saturday and watch cartoons.
Right.
And by the time this stuff came on, it was already like 11. You're already like going outside and having fun and doing something else.
Not me. I was lamenting the end of cartoons. There were a couple of so wrestling was always
down.
Exactly. So it would be like cartoons, and then either fishing, college football, or wrestling. It's just like either way, you're just like bummed because you're like, oh, no more Transformers.
And I guess within my generation, this obviously the WWF was big, but also another one was American Gladiators.
Yeah.
Always came on right after cartoons, and that was like a nice chunk of hour.
Here's a little Keith Vincent True Life Real Corner, whatever we call it. My mom was like dead set against us never watching American Gladiator. Like, you will not watch American Gladiator. And everything she predicted is true, but she was like, it's a debasing thing. It's making everyone dumber. It's going to turn into Running Man. Everything in the world's going to turn into Running Man. And she's right. I mean, we got Donald Trump as president.
All started with American Gladiator. If that show hadn't been put on the air, Donald Trump would not be president.
She took Running Man seriously.
Yeah, it's a cautionary tale, and we should all take it seriously. Look at the reality we're in.
Was she basing this on Running Man, the movie, or the book?
The movie. Yeah.
Wow. That's funny.
But I mean, it's not a big leap if you think about it. Sure. From American Gladiators to Running Man.
Yeah, it's true. Everything's a show.
Yeah, they were shooting a gun at people in that. It just had like soccer balls in it. You know what I mean?
Well, the other difference too is that like the people who were competing were, I don't know, it's almost like American Ninja Warrior.
We were told they were volunteers, Holt, but we don't know.
Like
the people on Running Man were told that those people were volunteers as well. But we know Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't volunteer. And we know he didn't kill those people. He's not the Bakersfield Butcher. It's also not a big leap for, like, honestly, what I think that the erosion of civil discourse due to, I think reality TV is like plays a pivotal role in it. And I think that it's not a big jump from American Gladiator to reality TV.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing
I love you, Mom. You're right.
How people is like discernment in consumption and just and this is like we talked about this last time, but like how if you grew up with TV and it's like growing up with like eating sugar, and then when sugar's in everything, you don't know any better, and so you just get diabetes. You know what I mean? Like no joke. If you don't realize that every piece of cereal you put in your mouth has way more sugar than
just a piece of bread, even
yeah, like it's all sugar now. And you grew up in a period where they just didn't make it with all that sugar all the time. It's the same with the TV. If you have a bunch of, like, you had a little bit of TV and there was some nutritional content in it because there were either regulations or the barrier for entry was such that like legit people were making news shows, and when there was TV, there wasn't enough of it, so you had to luck out to even catch it, to going to where it's on all the time and it's just like a steaming pile of news. Like, it's the news garbage. Reality TV didn't kill that. Like you had your head. Really, the death of it is like on the highway.
America.
There was another death, and now there's another. Like just sensational local news chasing ratings.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Right. Yeah. That's like the American Gladiator stuff. Like that's bread and circus, kind of like I don't know. I think
but bread and circus allows the emperor to
but
a new tax
I think
code.
that the news stuff chased those ratings, and that's the problem.
But basically, if Glow hadn't been canceled, Hillary Clinton would be president.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
Or Hillary.
When they
Without a doubt.
canceled Glow, they canceled her.
Or Hillary Clinton would have basically been like Trump, like a doddering, mad, like she would have been on Glow, like roided out, like inappropriately touching young men, and be like, "Oh, I got the best weights. I got the biggest weights." She'd like
I got the best wrestling moves.
drive Bill Clinton.
So, did you guys ever go to a wrestling match or?
Can't say as I ever have. No.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been. So
like a wrestle like WWE. Well, it's the big ones in Connecticut, right? Like I've driven past that.
Well, no, that's where the
headquarters. Right?
That's the headquarters.
But I've driven past that like
WWE
thing
yeah.
a lot.
Well, that's their headquarters. It says WWE right on the side of the building off of Highway 95, Interstate 95. Yeah.
Well, then
or 90. What is it? 90 or 95? 95.
Don't they have smaller leagues like Kaiju Big Battles something?
Well, Kaiju was an art school band of people. They're a museum school from Boston that just started doing that fun,
and then it just kind of blew up,
snowballed.
Yeah.
But never became. I mean, that would have been a great little Saturday morning TV show type of a thing.
Yeah.
And it really was set up. They were using a lot of multimedia stuff at the time.
Yeah.
There were definitely some TV specials with them in it or something.
Did they?
I thought so. Or maybe they were just like
they had
segments on shows.
Yeah, they had a lot of video segments that went along with their show and stuff. Yeah.
I don't know.
But what do you guys think of the Netflix show that's based on the true story?
I really like the Netflix show.
Yeah,
I like the performances. The arc is good. I think it's funny and like heartfelt. It's good. It's a good balance.
Though maybe I'm just new to this. I guess I haven't watched an awful lot of Netflix original series, but there's nudity in it, and I did not know. I didn't know that was a thing that you could do on a Netflix show.
Yeah, I think they're kind of like HBO, where they kind of we can do this because we can do whatever we want.
Right. And then what else had Peaky Blinders has some nudity in it too. But again, BBC has different kind of
standards,
and Netflix has a little different requirements.
They may also have slightly different edits for Netflix or something. I don't know.
But it's not a Game of Thrones level stuff.
No, not at all. No.
And honestly, the glow.
And it's not tittillating either.
Right.
It's like
ew.
It's almost like
getting changed in the locker rooms.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like clinical almost.
Yeah. The first episode is a little bit of hey,
yeah,
you like seeing ladies wrestle? Why don't you come in here? You see some boobies too. And then, basically it's like a Barker. You're like, come one, come all. It's a trap.
Hey, you like rap music? Hey, you like rap music?
It's my album.
Yeah, what I like about the show is that there's there's not a lot of actors that you know. I mean, you've seen them from here or there. You kind of can, say you saw them in that thing before. But so it's it's a whole cast of characters,
fresh faces.
Fresh faces also gives it, place within the time. Obviously, the '80s and things like that. But then also, I think the thing I really like about it, it just gives these struggling actors in LA, like that sort of vibe of like want to be on TV. They're no matter whatever they'll do, whether that's wrestling and going through painful process, is that they want to be famous.
Yeah. And it's
not even famous. They just want to have the job.
And there's people there who take advantage of that desperation.
And what is this, like Genji or Kenji Cohen?
But I thought it was done well.
But it's the same sort of ensemble feeling that you get with like Orange is the New Black, because it's the same creator.
Yeah. I thought there were a lot of parallels to dramatically in this show, because Orange is the New Black, it's like, two friends who are now enemies.
Yeah.
And they end up in prison together, and there's a lot of that,
like forced to deal with one.
And this is the same, like one of the key plot lines is two best friends, one betrayed the other, and now they're on this show together. And of course, they're friends, they're enemies, and they're actually wrestling. So,
And they have to go through their arc, and it's a lot of like fish out of water stuff.
As well, the powers that be that are pulling the strings in this thing know that these two characters are have this history, and they're using that.
Right. And it's women being used like by men in power.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I do like the show. I have watched it, but there's just something that keeps a little off in it for me, that from being a great show. It's like a good show. There's something that doesn't, and I can't quite figure out why. But I think part of it too, the tone just sometimes varies quite a bit, like and it mixes them not always successfully. And I think too, it's like sometimes it feels very like grounded, and this is based on a true story. And other times it gets very fanciful, and some of the characters are more believable than others. Like there's the one girl who's sort of a wannabe Madonna, who's always going out partying and stuff, and her character I just never believe her, buy her as a real person.
No, the British.
No, the one that's always like in a limo.
Well, she's based off of, like, in the documentary they talk like one of those women is based off her, and she's like, I was sneaking out and I was partying and like basically people trying to get away with stuff. But yeah, she's got a weird artist too.
Yeah, and they sort of make that part of her a little too overt. It's like they didn't quite figure out what to do with her.
Well, I think she's also like a weird, like, you don't know if she's like home, because she lives in that limo.
Yeah.
So she's like homeless, and like you don't know.
Or is she just a runaway from?
Yeah, is she like really like actually rich, or is she like a weird,
like putting it on? Yeah.
One of the things I really like is that the show takes place in the '80s. Since our generation kind of looks back at that time fondly, there's no small amount of movies and books and stuff that talk about the '80s. But what's great about this is it's kind of like the ugly '80s that a lot of us forgot. Like the pants
I have not forgotten.
Yeah. But a lot of the fashion and stuff, they just really don't try to make it look good. No. They're like, no, this is a picture in a yearbook of somebody from 1985. It's that outfit that someone's going to be wearing.
And they kind of lean into that as well, I think.
I don't think it's as lean in as much as it is just like, this is holding up a mirror to the 80s.
It's like that. Yeah. I mean, my sister's from that generation, and New Jersey and New Jersey hair.
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck are you doing with your life?
Also, you watch the documentary, and they're like, it's more garish.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
It's like far less polished than what you see in the show. And the other thing that we didn't really touch on yet is like this show, they do it in the Netflix series, and it's like kind of like you think, oh, this is really silly when they have like people with hoods on fighting like the black characters.
Mm-hmm.
But then, and like you have like the woman who's like going like super Russian, and like the like little Chinese girls who are like Vietnamese or Korean women, but they're like sold as Chinese.
They really lean
girls.
into stereotypes.
What's funny is that and this is the thing that they did in the Real Glow, and I think that's what you're talking about, is where they have like a lady who's from Thailand, but they have her dressed up in like a Vietnamese like one of these hats, that one of those cone type hats,
rice farmer hat,
right? And she has like a samurai sword, and they're just mixing up all these cultures as the one she's just a Chinese person.
What do they call her?
I forget what her
fortune
character...
cookie. Like, come on.
Yeah. So, but then you get.
But I mean, wrestling was
that's what they did. Yeah.
Well, you go to the actual documentary, and it's like there's Big Mama, who's the voodoo woman, who's got half her face painted black and half her face painted white. And there's, we already talked about Mount Fiji, who's this big Samoan, Mount Fuji, who's like a Samoan woman who has like, she's huge and burly. And then the Matilda the Hun walking around with like swastikas on and like with people coming out goose stepping as she's like proceeded and forward. And then you do have like people in hoods like fighting
the
KKK fighting people. Like it's all like way over the top. And you're like, no, but they were really like going this crazy. Like you have
went that far
in the show. You have the like wolf girl, but then in the actual like in the real Glow, they had dementia, who was just like a crazy woman who they bring out in a cage, and who would like you'd see them all rapping and she'd be blowing bubbles and like always in character, wild eyed, like. Crazy.
Which is funny because they had they obviously they were trying to push what they were doing in men's wrestling to the next level, in the WWF and those. And so, in the WWF they did have the
Iron Sheik.
The Iron Sheik. They did have a guy, I think the guy's name was Hate Monger.
Coco Beware.
Yeah, and he was like the voodoo type of dude. I remember there was a character called the Stormtrooper who was like a Nazi guy. Like they were like, how do we make it yet more cartoonish?
How much further can we push
it?
Now, and is like, so in the real Glow, because I didn't watch the documentary, is the actress who played Dementia, was she really like, was she kind of crazy herself?
No, I think she was like, but again, they were encouraged to stay in character at all times. Right. So you kind of were like, who is this person really? And they had to like go by they knew each other more by their stage names, which again is I think another kind of flaw in the documentary is that you don't really know who's who. Kind of thing. It gets to be like a little like
because you do know at first when they're first introduced, in the documentary they usually have the footage of them from the Glow days. Right. So you really make that, but after that first time, if you don't remember who that character is, you don't really remember.
Plus, then like some of them are playing multiple characters, and it's like all over the place.
Gotcha. Lack clarity.
Yeah. There is, if you have any sort of like squeamishness, there's one part of the documentary where a woman's arm gets bent in half, and she talks about how her like tendon actually came out of her arm. And she had to pick it up off the mat. That was one of the good guys. Anything else, Brian? What do you think? Do you think you would go try to find Glow and watch it?
I would like to see the actual show, just watch a full episode and see how it played out. I mean, it was still from that era where, kind of a hodgepodge. Let's have fun and let's do whatever we want. And also, just a matter of, I guess, network clearance and stuff like that. Like, how to get away with things.
Yeah.
And more or less, like, even as a kid, sometimes I would still laugh at some of those things. We live in a different age now, but...
Yeah, and we didn't get half the jokes, half the references.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, we just knew that the person with the swastika was the bad guy, and that's that, yeah.
Yeah, Nazis were
it's a sun symbol.
No, but yeah, no, I definitely want to not gonna spend $25, but
go dig it up.
Somehow find a full episode or something like that, or a paper special.
I'm sure you can find clips on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, but you get a lot if you watch this documentary on Netflix. You get a lot of the old show in it.
All right.
Yeah, it is fun. Like after watching the fictional show, it is fun to see like the real version, and it's fun to compare and all that.
Yeah, and you can see what they were drawing from pretty heavily. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jules, what about you? Last thoughts on Glow? Will you finish the series?
I think I will finish it. I mean, like I said, it's not a great show, but it's a good show, and I will definitely finish it. I think we started watching over the summer and then got derailed and never finished it, and I think we'll come back to it once there's a lull. Which we're kind of in a lull right now. We're pre Game of Thrones, pre Westworld, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I feel like you really root for the characters. Mm-hmm. Whether you allow yourself to get into the show or not, I feel like you're rooting for these people the whole time. Yeah, even the despicable. Well, I mean,
the heels.
Even the people pulling the strings, like the men who are like putting this thing together. You even root for them a little.
I think that's possibly intentional, where it's like it's a macro version of like this is a very soap operatic making a wrestling show where like
all these people have flaws, but you still want them to succeed.
And so like you have your heel who's kind of funny, and everyone's a little bit like hyper extended, so that it's not super real, but everything kind of can land if it's done right.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, that's when you come down to it. It's just fun to watch, and everybody's and all the cast is really likable as well. Like everybody's pretty charismatic, and you want to know what happens to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good pick.
Yeah, so go out and see it.
Yeah, where can people watch?
Netflix.
Netflix for both, right?
Yep, for the documentary and the show. I'm sure if you type in something to YouTube, you'd see plenty of clips of the original.
I was trying to see if any of them were dead, any of the Glow wrestlers, because there's like a lot of lists of like, because that's something too. They talk later in the documentary. They talk about injuries, and they talk about like how like one of the women, Matilda the Hun, was 35 when they started, basically, and so she wrestled for those 5 years, and then for at least another 10 years past that. And she blew out her legs, and she was basically picking up people and hurt her spine up pretty bad. Like she's
but this is in the documentary. These parts,
So that kind of stuff. But you also get that the woman who played, like these people who like were holding a lot of mass,
right?
Their bodies, like Mount Fuji's knees are real bad right now, so she's like been in a nursing home for a while.
Yeah, but I think that if you compare them to basically any wrestlers from that era, it's the same story.
Well, it's not like they were modern, like Chris Benoit or whatever. Like you get repetitive head injuries, and you get kind of like banged up. But some of them, like there's a woman that Tina Ferrari wrestled for another 20 years past that in like a bunch of stuff. So there's some of them kept in the career.
And I like that there was there were markets for these people to continue that if they chose.
I mean, it's still pretty limited, and they talk about that too.
But a lot of them, like the lady who played Matilda the Hun, I think she was a wrestler before Matilda the Hun. She was a wrestler before Glow too. She had already had
but she
mat experience.
From her point of view, though, it was like hard knocks, and they talk about that in the documentary. How like women wrestling, like small people, and like any of that stuff, those were acts to draw in crowds for like the main wrestlers. So you didn't have a league of people wrestling, and so she was like, no men would wrestle her, but she would be more than happy to wrestle a man. So
Andy Kaufman would have
exactly.
Why didn't she go wrestle with Andy Kaufman?
So they had her wrestle a bear.
Yeah.
Like
wow.
Straight up, she wrestled a bear, and then she talks about that briefly in the documentary. But she was someone who was like you said, she was a career wrestler, but it was almost more like Harney level kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where she's
a lot of wrestling is that,
right?
Until
like
you get
just doing the circuits.
Yeah. I mean, there's still lots of like you said, circuits like that.
Right.
In fact, my cousin is well, I don't know if he is now. He just moved, but they were in this like Southern wrestling kind of organization where they would wrestle at like state fairs and things like this. So it's still happening. It's just really the enthusiasm for it.
But yeah, and then also, I mean, the cheapness also they were saying made everything was built kind of cheap, so they were just getting extra wear and tear on their bodies because nothing was built properly.
Yeah,
so pretty brutal. But it's fun. I would recommend. All right, here's a question. Would you watch the series first or the documentary first?
It's hard for me to say because I did watch the documentary first, but seeing Jules seeing the documentary after having seen the show, I kind of feel like that might be the way to do it. Like see the show, see what they present to you, and then see the documentary, and you're like then you kind of connect the dots a little bit in a kind of a more satisfying way, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of more surprising that way because I feel like if you know about the real show and you know about the real people, then you might compare the fictional show more negatively. It's kind of like if you read the book first.
Yeah.
I think you'll enjoy the fictional series first, and then if you then see the real thing, you'll kind of appreciate the real thing even more, and it's fun to compare and connect the dots.
And then you can watch the new seasons after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've just only seen the show and I saw a little bit of the documentary. I want to finish the documentary. I'm always interested in just like how these little things just spark and get started, and have something like where it's part of your childhood, where it was just, this idea that some rich kid had or something.
somehow got it made.
Right. Like I never, even as a kid, I never knew that there was a stage show for Herman. I always knew TV show, and knowing that this was his act, and then it led to which led to one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Not only it was a character that he developed like in a sketch comedy school type of thing, like the Second City Theater, with
just people working
people like John Lovitz and those obviously Phil Hartman and those guys all came from the same time
working at something.
All right, so Glow, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling documentary on Netflix, and the series on Netflix as well.
Go check it out.
Go pick Keith.
Yeah, it's a one-stop shopping. Go to Netflix.
Answers such as hard work. Years ago, the holy
feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of The New Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho and on Instagram at @forward_ghost. And you can find my book club podcast at woundedstab.com. And you can find my RPG storytelling podcast at forwardghost.com. Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me on earthlingkeith.com on the internet to see some of my artwork that's now already outdated. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that.
Update the website.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I'm legally allowed to update some of the stuff I have been working on.
Just blur everything.
Yeah, there you go. There's just copyright. But Jules, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at BeautifulJules. And how about you, Brian?
You can find me at lowroar.com, as well as every social media called The Low Roar. And then also check out Punch the Devil.
All right.
PunchTheDevil.com.
Sweet. Cool. So before we roll out of here, Brian, what's new to you this week?
What's new to me this week? I've been addicted to this stupid video game, stupid app. It makes no sense. It's really dumb, and I need to stop.
This sounds like a great pick.
Yes, but, it's just something stupid to wind down after I come home from a long day's work.
And what
Some
is
people
it?
have
What's
a
the
beer.
app? What's it called?
Some people have a shot of whiskey. Some men like to come home and play Animal Crossing.
Oh, yes. You and many others.
Yeah. So playing this dumb little game where you collect things and you sell them to virtual animals. And then you buy virtual furniture in your virtual camp. And it's so dumb.
So so when the first Animal Crossings came out,
right.
I lived with a couple people who just loved it and played it all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe you've met them, John Holt. But my problem with the game was always just kind of like, so wait, you have to like earn money? You have to do tasks to earn money? Right. But I was just like that's a little too much like real life to me.
Exactly. It just has this fine sugar coating of
and
cute animals.
Yeah, but you should see this banjo I'm going to buy.
No, the best thing was
it took me 4 hours to earn money.
In the GameCube one, you could get classic NES games, put them in your little house, and then play the game inside the game. So you could play Zelda in Animal Crossing.
Yeah, but the whole time you're playing Zelda, Holt, you're not out there making more bells. And you can't pay the rent, and they're going to take your Zelda away from you.
That's all right, man.
That's where VR is going to be heading.
It's the weeds and the cockroaches that start to grow all around your town.
Right. Yeah. You're going to start trading Bitcoin and all that.
So what platform are you playing it on?
I am playing it on an iPad. I'm not playing it on my phone or anything like that. But, maybe an hour after work or something like that. But it's just now that I've realized it's been a week maybe.
So people where I work are playing it at work.
Okay, yeah,
they're like,
that's right.
This thing's rendering. I'm gonna play Animal Crossing. It's happening.
No, people do that at work, and same thing with still, some people still at work are playing Pokemon Go.
Wow, nice.
I think I had that one had a month for me, and then I was done.
What I wish is it was like, because they've already got camps and trains and all this stuff, and you're like collecting stuff and doing work for people. I wish it was like Hobo Simulator, where like you'd come into town and there'd be a sign that says like, we'll feed you if you work, kind of thing. In like Hobo script, can't or whatever, in like the Hobo script, or it's like
that's the puzzle. You gotta learn Hobo script.
warning police or whatever, and the like that's the symbol.
You have to learn that. You have to learn the Hobo language,
Hobo chant,
Hobo code.
Yeah, so that you can like properly.
And you get paid in Hobo nickels.
Yeah, you ride the rails in Animal Crossing.
Be the change you want to be. You got to make that game.
It's called Animal.
It's called Homeward Bound.
Play Animal Crossing now. Me and Brian will just hop the rails, ride along, work for some food.
You could be a character like Scruffy, like Boxcar Scruffy, and.
They're really cute hobos.
But then, But also, like, some of these characters are going to have some random, mental illness, so you don't know whether your character's going to have schizophrenia or bipolar, and you just got to work with it. You
just have a character that just sees everything be pies. Hot, steamy pies.
Yeah, so...
But Animal Crossing.
Yeah, so Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. It's on any of the app stores or whatever. I don't know, they're updating it, or I don't know. I'm probably going to stop playing. I got to.
Why? Why should
you? Are there
you?
like in-app purchases? Or
did you decorate your
There
hut?
are in-app purchases, but, I haven't spent any money on it.
Do you have to pay any up front? Is there
nothing up front? It's actually...
Oh, it's a real free download?
It's a real free download,
wow. It's a freemium, though, right?
I think Nintendo is pretty good with that stuff. They're not like, trying to gouge you like those other games. So, it's actually a pretty good game for what it's trying to put
free.
For free, that's also contained within an app. It's not
what
a
level
full
are
game,
you?
though. I don't know, like a 40 or something like that.
Nice.
So, but
Wait, there are levels in the game?
I think so. Yeah.
You just got to level up or something.
Yeah. Did you not? You haven't played this game?
No.
How is it that you haven't played?
I'm not going to go anywhere near this game.
Yeah, I think
He's a recovered addict. He's spoken like a true, taking it every day.
Yeah, no,
recovered addict.
I call Tom Nook my sponsor.
Yeah. I played the original.
I have my 5-year bell.
What was it? We had some friends of ours that also were addicted to the DS version of it.
Mm-hmm. Mister was a big,
yeah.
Mister and Kathy would play it a lot.
Former guest Matt Rodriguez. Yeah.
I don't want to name names, but
it's okay. Done. Yeah. This is a thing he won't mind being attached to.
But anyways, that's what was new to me.
All right, good. New to you.
Don't touch that game.
So next week, who's going to be up? You or me, Jules?
I already did it.
Oh yeah,
Brian or John?
Sure. I'll go.
All right, Brian. What are you going to bring to the table next week?
Next week I'll bring DuckTales.
All right.
Ooh.
It's a classic cartoon that most of us have grown up with. But also they've created a new version for it. It's a new revamp. It's touching on little different things than the show that you grew up with. But then we'll talk about both of them, what the differences are, but also what makes the show so great.
And if you want to be up on the action, go check it out on the internet. See some episodes. There's some. I think if you go to Disney XD, you can watch some of the new ones.
Watch at least the first episode, which is like an hour-long episode.
And then you can, and that way you know what we're talking about next week.
Yeah.
When we talk about it.
And you can dig up here and there the original DuckTales if you like.
Right.
Woo-hoo. All right. So, gang, we'll have links to all that on our website, newtoshow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at newtoshow. You can leave reviews and ratings on iTunes. We do recommend that. That would be very helpful. And also, some of this stuff might be new to you, but the show might be totally new to someone else. Go share it to someone else and let them know about it so that they
give
can have
them the gift of new.
Yeah, let them be having it.
Mm-hmm.
Gang, it may not be new, but
maybe it's new to you.
Explosion sound.
This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate.